Lovely. Okay. It's lovely to be with you today, and I'm sorry that I can't be with you in person. So my name's Di Swift. I'm an associate lecturer at the Open University on the primary education course. But it's my real delight to share with you today a project that I was involved in when I was director of a SCIT, a school-centred teacher training programme. And this project was looking at primary geography's contribution to education for sustainability. So the project report is displayed on the screen now, and we're going to use that project report to go through a few of the key ideas. So the project was funded by BERA, the British Educational Research Association, and it was part of their work in relation to their curriculum forum. And it was a small grant of around £3,000 to look at curriculum investigation. But what that money did was buy 4 geography leaders time out of their school to come together to talk about some of these really important and gritty issues about curriculum design, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a moment, the concept of coherence, which again we'll revisit, and that all-important notion of what is the contribution of primary education to this big concept of sustainability. So within the report, which I think you've got a link to, there's a little bit of an introduction, a little bit of background about the grant. And then the report is organised into sections, so the key elements, and that's what we'll perhaps concentrate on today. And that will introduce you to the particular curriculum design intervention that we used. And then we share some of the work, some of the pupils' work, and some of our reflections on how our sequences of learning went. And when I'm talking about a sequence of learning, that was anywhere between 4 and 6 lessons, sometimes done weekly, sometimes done in a block. There were different ways of organising the sequences of learning. So I hope that the full report will be particularly useful to you. The summary is obviously a very powerful insight, and in there we share the definition of sustainability that we use. So it's perhaps a very familiar definition from the Brundtland report, dated in terms of 1987, but still we felt very powerful. And that's where sustainability is defined as meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And one of the things that we found is, as a group of primary geography educators coming together, actually it was really important for us to debate that term. The term sustainability is a contested term. It is a term that can include a myriad of different perspectives. And so although, you know, all of us have got a background in teaching primary geography, not all of us have got degrees in geography, we still found that we needed to come together and debate that term. And that may be something that you will also find of value within your own schools and settings. The Brundtland report is also used by the WWF, the Worldwide Fund for Nature. And one of the key resources for the project was, in fact, the School Sustainability Guide that's published by the WWF. And if you have a look at that guide, there's a bit more of an expanded definition on page 50 of the WWF School Sustainability Guide. And that is a resource that I would heartily recommend looking at, although we used it quite cautiously, because whilst it's a resource I would recommend looking at, it's got lots of activities. And what we wanted to do in the project was think about our purposes rather than going for the activities. So we thought very carefully about our purposes before engaging in activities. And again, some of you will perhaps be familiar with a curriculum approach called Heads, Hearts, Hands. So in terms of our heads, we engaged with this concept of sustainability. In terms of our hearts, we were thinking about the moral purpose of education. And that was one of the things that we used carefully to think about the WWF resource. WWF is a campaigning organisation what is the role of campaigning organisations in schools. So that's where we were using our hearts and thinking about the moral purpose. And then the hands, and we had to resist the hands. We had to resist going straight for the activities. So there's some wonderful activities in that WWF guide, but we didn't dive into the activities. We wanted to step back and think about curriculum design and why it was important for us as teachers to exercise agency in terms of our curriculum design. There's, of course, a connection between sustainability and climate change. And again, we thought a little bit about that. And another important aspect for us was a lot of the government policy documents relate to science rather than geography. And as geographers, we found that a little bit offensive because we were really mindful that geography can make a different contribution to science. So again, it's thinking about the importance of our disciplinary lenses when thinking about what we can contribute. So having grappled a bit with sustainability, we then grappled a bit with this notion of curriculum design. And what we found ourselves differentiating between is a concept of curriculum design, curriculum making, and lesson planning, and all of them are important. So within the skit, of course, when we're working with beginning teachers, quite often they're focused on individual lessons, but those lessons sit within the curriculum that we make, and the curriculum that we make sits within our overarching design. So when we're designing the curriculum, that's when we were really thinking about the contribution of primary geography. And interestingly, when we were thinking about the contribution of primary geography, we went, of course, to the national curriculum. We went to the Ofsted research reviews. We went to the GA's resources about the role and the purpose of geography, as well as the government's materials about sustainability education. When we looked at those, neither in the national curriculum nor in the GA's own material is the concept of sustainability there as a disciplinary concept, as a key concept within geography. And again, at first, we were a bit offended by that, and we were thinking, but our project, we want a project that engages teachers and children with this concept of sustainability, thinking about meeting the needs of the future without compromising, the present. Why is sustainability not there? And we actually came across some work by Alice Maud, who talks about sustainability as being an evaluative concept rather than a disciplinary concept. And what she means by that is sustainability contains a particular view that we use to evaluate the way that we realise some of the disciplinary concepts. So that definition of sustainability, if we use it in relation to some of geography's key concepts like place or scale or location or environment, it changes the way we think about place or scale or location or environment. So what we found was by using sustainability and place, or sustainability and location, or sustainability and environment, we were then really clear, or much clearer, about geography's disciplinary contribution, and we were using sustainability as a concept to specialise and organise the way that we thought about geography's contribution. And I guess there I'm using the term concept to think about a big idea that encompasses lots of views and perspectives. So I'm using the idea of a concept to think about a range of perspectives, not to offer a single solution. And that ended up being really important to us, because in the project, as teachers, our concept of sustainability grew and developed. Our concept of curriculum design grew and developed. Our concept of coherence grew and developed. And you'll see from the evidence bit of this report that we'd also want to argue very much, and really importantly, that the pupils' perspective on sustainability grew and developed, because we used it as a big idea, this concept of meeting the needs of the present without contributing future generations to meet their needs. We use that as a big idea rather than looking for atomized facts or information that's really difficult to generate ideas from. And rather than looking at skills or activities. So big concepts help us relate the knowledge and the skills together to develop our understanding and our meaning making. And that was really important to us. And that ended up us leading a challenge to some of the government's materials, where if it focuses on a very scientific definition of sustainability, which again is still contested, but maybe that very scientific, arguably more propositional view of sustainability forgets the heart and the hands bit. It overemphasizes the heads bit. And when we're thinking about a big concept like sustainability, that holistic perspective we certainly found to be really powerful. So the other concept that I perhaps need to talk a little bit more about is this concept of coherence. And so we used an approach developed by Professor Elizabeth Rata, who works in New Zealand. She's based at the University of Auckland, and she's developed this framework called Curriculum Design Coherence. And it's based on this idea that if we organise the curriculum logically, that really helps the children to grow their knowledge, to accumulate their knowledge. And one of the things about coherence is making concepts very visible, being very conscious when we're using concepts to design and organize our curriculum. So you can't teach a concept, you can't teach necessarily sustainability, but you can give children access to the ideas associated with sustainability so that the children are developing their own schema. And to do that, we need to be really logical about the way that we organise the curriculum. So we need to name concepts in our curriculum design. And by naming those concepts, that gives us as teachers agency, because we're very deliberate, we're very intentional, we're very thoughtful about our practices. So the introduction goes through in a little bit more detail about this notion of coherence in curriculum design, some of the ideas that I've outlined about geography's contribution. And then what I've just touched on now is that relationship between teachers' curriculum design knowledge and pupil progression. So again, some of you will be familiar with this notion of horizontal and vertical progression in the curriculum, horizontal thinking within a class or a year group, a vertical between the different year groups. So again, as leaders of primary geography, how did we enable different year group teachers to engage with the concept of sustainability? How were they using that engagement in their own teaching and learning of lessons? So thinking about this coherent curriculum design, not just within a year group, but over time. And obviously with a concept such as sustainability, where geography's got a contribution to make, so as science, so as history, so as art, when we're engaging with a big idea like that, being really conscious, deliberate and intentional. And of course, that takes time, and we were very privileged in the project to be able to have that time. The way we used that time was we met together over 4 days. So we knew the bid was successful a couple of years ago around this time. We then recruited schools. We spent time looking at the literature. So again, that really important of developing our own knowledge. We then looked at the CDC model itself, which again, we'll look at in a little bit more detail at the moment. We planned our work, we worked collaboratively. We then visited each other in our schools, which was just a joyful experience, and then came back together to reflect. So that's the way that we organised our time. So I'm just going to skip through to the CDC model. This is how it looks. So thinking about subject concepts, and then developing a proposition, a proposal for the learning, then linking, as I've mentioned, the propositional and the skills knowledge to develop understanding, that know how to knowledge, so that we can evaluate the success of our programme. So in section 3, that's where you'll find a little bit more about the CDC model that's got much wider applicability than geography and sustainability. It's a different way of thinking about curriculum design, but one that we found very powerful and very empowering. And then what we actually did, we had different year groups, so year 3, year 4, year 5, year 6, which was beautiful, but by coincidence. The year 1 teacher looked at food production, so their proposition was food production is diverse, looking at sustainability in terms of diverse environments, diverse types of food production. And the year 4 teacher looked at the locality, and interestingly, it was in Stoke-on-Trent, looking at the pottery industry, inherently unsustainable, and at the moment lots of the children were experiencing parents who are being made redundant, so there was quite a negative connotation with the pottery industry and the relationship with the environment. So this gave the teacher the opportunity to enable the children to think differently. The year 5 teacher looked at water use, something that's been in the news again currently, and interesting, that teacher was also concerned with this concept of eco-anxiety, where children can feel very anxious about the environment, and actually a focus on sustainability education enables us to open up understanding so that children can use that understanding as a resource to sense make and meaning make. And that teacher would reflect that it did actually reduce some of the anxiety that some of the children came into the classroom with. And then the year 6 teacher was looking at food choices. And again, one of the things we were conscious of with the project is thinking about the learning maturity of the children and their own agency. And with that concept of sustainability, what was meaningful for them in terms of the choices that were within their control, so that, again, we were making an authentic contribution. So the detail of each teacher is there, and you can see there we've got in the penultimate column where we used key concepts from geography. So teacher 1 was looking at environment, place, space. Similar for teacher 2, but the addition of human and physical resources, water use, human and physical resources, and interconnection and place. And the teacher in year 4 looking at place, scale, diversity. So sustainability is an evaluative concept in relation to those disciplinary concepts of geography. And then I'm just going to finish off by sharing some of the evidence created from the children and the way that we evaluated the children's understanding. And the way that we worked with the children was we used mind maps. So at the beginning of the project, the children did their mind maps, and then at the end of the sequence of learning, they added to it. So this is from School 1, working with the younger children, and quite interestingly, at the beginning of the project, sustainability, I think it's something for children aged 16 plus. I think it's to suss things out. So the mind maps gave us a way into the children's prior knowledge and understanding. And then in blue, in this case around, is some of the knowledge that the children then were associating with the concept of sustainability. So again, not looking for single solutions, but looking for widening the children's view and perspectives on sustainability, looking for them to be more informed, more thoughtful, more careful with their thinking, in relation to this, how we meet our present needs without unsettling the needs of the future. And it was quite fascinating. Again, I'm perhaps going to just skip through to one of the other schools' pupils' work on sustainability. And interestingly, in this school, prior to the project, the way that they assessed the children at the end of a unit of work was that the children did a form of test, and the children had to get 7 out of 10. And if they didn't get 7 out of 10, they had to go and revisit. Interestingly, what the teacher said was by using the mind maps, they actually found that the children were connecting knowledge beyond the taught knowledge. So they were connecting their everyday experiences, they were bringing that in. They found that some of the children previously who perhaps hadn't performed well on that very reductive testing actually have got a lot of knowledge about sustainability that the teacher previously had been innocent of. And equally, the mind maps at the end enabled the teachers to see how the learning that the children had experienced in the lessons had leaked out into their everyday lives and leaked out into other subjects. And we claimed that as a very positive outcome of the project, but it also made us think very carefully about a complex concept such as sustainability, and what can be a useful way of assessing that, assessing the impact of our curriculum design. And actually, we need expansive means of assessing the impact of our learning, particularly in a subject like geography, where we've got a range of disciplinary concepts that we can contribute. So I think I'll just pause and end there and hope that that's given you an insight into the project. You've got access to the report and to the links, and our conclusions are there. The next steps. So it's lovely to be sharing the project here, because that real encouragement, really, although it's a gritty concept, a real encouragement for you to engage with your school colleagues, because for our young people, sustainability is such a significant concept, both for them now and in their future lives, and empowering them through thinking carefully about it really makes our job worth doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Di. A really rich walkthrough what is a very powerful document. I remember when I saw you present on that the first time, I was really taken by it. So it reminds me of the ways that I can bring that into my own work and my own teaching. I love the idea of sussing out sustainability, and that assessment point at the end is so important, because we get asked such a lot about how we think about assessment in foundation subjects in primary geography, and you talked about expansive assessment, the leaking out of knowledge into different areas. It's so wonderful. So such a lot for people to reflect on there. I just wonder, with the participants that you had, and it's a bullet point that you've got on your key findings on the website, I wonder what view they had, because you had 4 days with them, as you said, on this idea of the significance of the effortful nature of curriculum design as a very key professional capability, because that is counter to this marketplace of curriculum solutions that we sometimes get involved with in schools. I wonder if they had any reflection on how that impacted on their thinking about primary geography in the future, and maybe other foundation subjects as well.
Yeah, thanks, Anthony. A great question, and a really important one to address. So I'm going to start with the evaluation day and we'll work backwards. So one of the teachers on the evaluation day said that they felt that they'd enjoyed teaching this sequence of learning far more because they'd created it. They were far more invested in it. And I think, as you rightly draw our attention to, we're inundated with reports on teacher workload. And one of the ways of addressing teacher workload is to generate standardized curricula. And one of the things we addressed in the project is that that's actually full of dilemmas. So when we think about teacher workload, thinking about hours worked is actually a very blunt instrument. So curriculum design, curriculum making, lesson planning are all effortful. They all involve a lot of hours. But actually, those are essential hours in what it is to be a teacher. What's special about being a teacher? What's special about being a teacher is turning subject knowledge into pedagogical knowledge. And that's our craft. That's at the core of what we do. If you take that away from us, you're taking away the core of what we do. And as you'll see from the report, 4 teachers, 4 different school contexts, 4 different solutions, differently impactful, but all of them successfully impactful. Very different. So the CDC gave us a framework, the sustainability definition gave us a framework. Within those edges, we could then be free. If we'd followed a script, we wouldn't have been able to be as relational with our pupils. We wouldn't have been able to be as relational with each other. So you can see, can't you, the logic of teachers are busy. We need to take the pressures off teachers. Here's a slide deck. But actually what you're doing is taking away the professional craft of curriculum design and thinking about the reasoning and the dilemmas. So a lot of our debates were addressing those dilemmas, recognizing that there isn't an answer out there. There isn't a single solution. These are the edges. Let's be playful within the edges.
Thank you. And you work with teachers and senior leaders as well. So I suppose those senior leaders could take that and trickle that down within their settings as well. Did they have different views or different resistances to the teachers? Because sometimes teachers can think, oh, I can be a bit subversive because I'm just in my room and I can close my door. Did they have any particular views, those leaders?
Yeah, that again, a really interesting point. And this is again where the project was contextualized within a teacher education partnership. So we worked with the senior leaders first, because they were releasing their teachers for 4 days. So that was whilst we'd got a bit of funding, that was significant investment, and you're arguably taking those teachers away from the classes. So you need this to be valuable work. But one of the things that we talked about with the senior leaders was this wasn't a course where the teachers were going to go back with answers. This was a professional development opportunity that was going to make our heads hurt, and we wouldn't necessarily, we were researching. So it was really important that the senior leaders were cognizant of what the project was and what it wasn't. I think for me, to take it up big picture for a bit, there's a really important aspect to this work. Our work needs to be evidence informed. Where does that evidence come from? Unless we've got projects like this, where teachers are generating evidence that becomes part of that base, then a lot of our evidence is going to be based more on that tick list and that performative, rather than the evidence that actually teachers enjoy thinking, and they enjoy grappling, and teaching is messy and complex and can't be reduced to a slide deck that we can replicate in different contexts. So actually changing, well, I don't know if it was changing the mindset of senior leaders, but making sure that senior leaders were conscious of what the project was and what it isn't was very important.
Lovely. We'll leave it there. Teaching as productive struggle. That's my kind of key takeaway phrase as we start a new term. Thank you, Di, so very much.